ability of our currencies, isn't it, as it were? Anyway, so talking about this, I just had a conversation with a certain gentleman over here, quite well known within the finance fintech ecosystem, who was talking about this system of efficiency perhaps being connected to identification systems, because now the problem is you've got a lot of fraudulent activities online. And so you need to be sure that this person is who really they are, and also to help quell AML, CFT, that is anti-money laundering, rather money laundering and financing of terrorism issues. He's here. We don't have much time, so I'm going to give him the mic to give a little comment, and then we'll come back to you, and Mr. Natsonbi can take it from there. Oswald Anunadaga, can you please take the mic? And he's going to give us a lowdown of some of these identification issues that have actually slowed down development efforts in the digital ecosystem.
Hello.
Thank you very much, Prince. My name is Oswald. I want to speak about the importance of identity and identification in digital transactions and digital services. Basically, at the moment, there's a very massive digital race that is going on across the world. And we are building all kinds of solutions, fintech solutions, and these are moving very quickly. But it's scarcely mentioned, and in a lot of the circles, the importance of identity in solving some of the financial issues that we have in the financial sector. And we have the issues of KYC management, we have the issues of identity verification, and also cybersecurity. But digital identity and the implementation of this allows us to be able to jump over all of these issues, so that we ensure that we are not building financial systems on top of a chaotic system of identifications that plagues a lot of African countries. There's about 40% of Africans do not have access to proper identification that allows them to access financial services. And this was previously one of the reasons why they were not able to access banking services, and the adoption of mobile money has actually helped to bridge this, because there's very little KYC required in these services. Now, in building a Pan-African payment settlement system and allowing interoperability of transactions between different countries and different people in all services, whereby we can get to a point where I can decide to buy something from Nigeria and pay with Ghana cedis, there's going to be a very massive rise of fraud and cybercrime in these situations. And that's something that we should talk about as much as we talk about the importance of building these systems. And one of the ways that we can do this is to implement digital identity solutions that are also Pan-African as well. African problems are very common among African countries. And so the issues that we have in Ghana are quite common also in Cote d'Ivoire and also in Namibia and other places. And so we should look at tackling this from a much larger point of view. When you look at the document on the AU's protocol on free movement of persons and right of residence and entry, it talks about an African passport. And then this protocol is supposed to ensure that we have interoperability between this. It is possible for us to base on that system and then implement a system of identification and KYC, digital identity, that spans the entire African continent. And based on that, we can now build on top of this various services that allow financial inclusion, various services that allow transactions and interoperability of services and financial services between different countries. It's very critical that we build this in, so that we don't create a system whereby that can be overrun by fraud and cybercrime and have a chaotic system that is difficult for us to even integrate with the rest of the world with, in terms of correspondence banking and all of that. Today, it's one of the things that we need to look at. The His Excellency the Vice President mentioned the identification issues that the Central Bank of Ghana faced and then had to implement the TIN number, look at the national ID and all of these services. It's now important for us to take this to the next level and implement the digital identity management solutions that allow us to be able to verify people no matter where they are located and be able to ensure that we provide security in building our payment transaction systems.
Okay, this is brilliant, right? Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Now, this is really a response to what our Central African Governor representative said. I think he wants to say something, but I'd like to go to Mr. Natombi, after which I'll come to our representative from Mwami, and then we'll come to you. And then I guess we'll start wrapping up, yeah? Mr. Natombi, you heard the submission on the need for robust identification systems, which have actually hampered relationships, interoperable relationships between banks. And as our Central African Bank Governor representative said, even among the two francophone zones, there has been a bit of there have been some few problems. And so, as Oswald said, fixing the identification problem might fix this issue. What's your take on that?
Listen, first of all, thank you for that intervention, which of course is very useful. I take this issue from two angles. One is I am working on the financial sector development, so I basically am very much concerned by financial inclusion. And financial inclusion for me has many different ways of being achieved. Of course, digital is one of the major ones. But one thing is digital ID and the other is digital financial inclusion. And digital identification is extremely important. I fully agree with that. It depends. This is very much a policy choice made by a government, which is not something that should be, it should be something, as you rightly mentioned, that should supersede, that is overarching. It will, of course, allow for financial inclusion, digital financial inclusion to be achieved. And when one doesn't have the digital identity as a policy choice made by the government, because it can't be run by the private sector, it has to be decided by the government. I'm sure it goes along with a lot of texts of law to make sure that the digital ID is put in place, which I fully concur with. But at the end of the day, in the meantime, one has to focus on digital financial inclusion. And clearly, the PAPS is also, like all the payment systems that we work on, our main concerns is cyber criminality and fraud. Cyber security and fraud are our main worries. And of course, we are trying to outpace the frauders, obviously. And this is, and I mentioned it in my opening statement, the KYC issues are crucial for the PAPS to be successful. Because if we don't have the right KYC embedded in the PAPS, we will lack credibility vis-a-vis our correspondent banks and our banks outside the continent. And it will actually end up backfiring on us. And the people at PAPS are very well aware of this, and they're working on it. And so this is why when we do the integrations with the other systems that already exist across the continent, there will be this linking up and thinking about the cybersecurity issues and the ID issues. And it's never forget, we're 54 countries on the continent, actually 55 countries on the continent, and we're all at different stages of ID services or how ID is provided. But fully agreed, digital identification should be the way to go. The point is one has to get the politicians behind it for it to become a reality, and of course for the public to accept the concept of digital identification and of course we've got to make sure we make sure that people understand the benefits of it. I'll stop here, thank you.
Okay, so you're talking about digital financial inclusion and the elimination of cybercrime, and as a result, KYC cannot be overemphasized, and that the provision of identity solutions is the way to go. That's what Mr. Natombi said. Shall we come to you?
Thank you very much. The issue of identity management is really key in financial transaction. You have to know your customer. And apart from know your customer, there are countries like Nigeria now, they have what we call the bank verification BVN. And without your BVN, you cannot even, you have to get a BVN linked to maybe your national ID card. And in WAMI now, we are presently collaborating with African Development Bank to have a robust, what we call UBI, Unique Bank Identity. And this is very key. If you have an open account in Ghana, they have to get all your details. And it is the same detail. When you go to Nigeria, you are, maybe you say you are Olofeso. When they get there, the thing will display Olofeso. You can't be Olofeso there as your surname, and you get to Ghana, and you say Emmanuel is your surname. It won't work. Because your fingerprint, your facial recognition, there are so many artificial intelligence platforms now being developed, and these are also embedded in it. And finally, I need to also mention that there is what we call the authentication level. It can be 2-layer authentication, 3-layer authentication. One is that if I want to transfer money now to somebody, I have an account that I can tell the bank to send the one-time password to my phone. I have a phone for it. And apart from that one-time password that will be generated automatically, I also have a token, and that token is not with me in Ghana. I have to call somebody elsewhere that the person will now will have an agreement. I have to get this number for me. They will press the token and they will say maybe 551, and I will press that token. So even if you collect my phone in Ghana, the token is somewhere else, which I cannot disclose here. So so you have so many levels of authentication, and that can really minimize fraud. But I think this issue of identity management, as I've said, is the way to go. The issue of UBI I mentioned, that I said the African Development Bank, we are doing it in 5 countries in West Africa now, excluding Nigeria, that already have a robust BVN platform. Thank you.
Dr. Asansu, you may continue in the same stream of thoughts, but I'm throwing this in just for the fun of it. So with all these solutions we've heard, what are we waiting for the rollout of a West African digital currency? You may continue. You may answer this, or you may continue.
I think it all boils down to the apprehension of the regulator, because, you know, for every good product that is introduced, someone is sitting somewhere in a corner trying to capitalize on it to make it look bad for their own benefit. And even if the central bank does not act, there are people and innovators in the economy who see an opportunity that they can capitalize on to make systems work. And it's about time the central banks had an open mind to adopt some of these innovative products. Bitcoin might be a bit far-fetched today, but in a couple of years, it will become front and center. And it's very important, and I'm very happy that the Central Bank of Ghana is issuing this e-currency, ECD, to begin with.
But that is a more regulated currency.
Exactly, because you need to have a handle on it. The reason why you need to have a handle on it is that you are in charge of monetary policy. And for every dollar that flows in or out, it has an implication on the exchange rate stability. So they need to have some form of control. But beyond that, we are talking about facilitating trade. And to facilitate trade, it may not just rest with the central bank. It goes beyond the central bank. It goes to financial sector players. It goes to fintechs. It goes to the buyer and the seller. What commodities or what products are they bringing to make sure that they are able to buy and sell? Sometimes the central bank might be in the dark, but it's very important that they avail themselves and they sit around the table when these discussions are being had. Otherwise, the end product is that they might repress trade or things would happen around them. To come back on the issue of digitization and the digital ID, it's very important because for every dollar that is sent, it is important for us to know who is at the front end, who the sender is, where he got the money from, because it goes beyond economic management.
Yeah.
It also goes into the subject of terrorism and money laundering.
Yeah,
So having a digital ID helps the system to be able to track and to regulate the flow of funds for good. And it is because of some of these evil people in quotes that these laws and these KYC mechanisms are required. It is an inconvenience to a lot of us who are doing it for the good. But because of some of these people, we may all have to abide by it, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, so that in the end, we might have a very near perfect system.
So we are all making a strong case for identification, authentication systems. Shall we go to our gentleman? And then we have a second one, and then we come back and end.